Robert Moog, the sound and energy that brought new life to the music of the 60s and beyond. Robert Arthur Moog is a product of New York City, from birth to growing up in Queens to attending prestigious universities like Columbia and Cornell, where he studied electrical engineering and engineering physics. As a kid, Moog was especially technologically savvy for his age. As he says himself, other kids went out and beat each other up or played baseball, and I built electronics. At age 14, he began building theremins, electronic instruments that are played with hand movements, as the one you can see here. Incredibly, before even graduating high school, he then took this craft and founded the R.A. Moog Company, which he used to create and sell theremin kits and gather up a large enough income to put him through college. After graduating and acquiring his PhD in engineering physics, Moog began experimenting with and developing technologies for more electronic instruments, and with the funding from his theremin company, he was able to begin the construction of his own models of the synthesizer. Moog was an incredible engineer and a musician at heart, so his vision became to create an electronic musical instrument that could output many different sounds that have never been heard before. This is where he gets the name synthesizer.
Well, to synthesize is to put together something complete out of its component parts. That's what a synthesizer does. It's like a bag of parts that you put together to make a complete sound.
Very cool. So he further studied and experimented with musical oscillators and amplifiers and the modification of circuitry, tapes, and electronic vibrations in order to cut or warp the sound, pitch, or tone of a sound wave. You must keep in mind that this was completely new territory for musicians and engineers alike. All of his so-called experimenting really was just that, a series of proposals, trial and error, tapping little things here and there until he achieved the sound that he desired. As his tests and development of the instrumentation continued, he met up with a musical composer that he met at a music conference in Rochester, New York, by the name of Herbert A. Deutsch. Together, they continued to make ground in the experimentation of the synthesis of sound using their machines. First, his devices were experimental instruments that were 7 feet tall, modules covered with tons of complex circuitry and connections. However, when word of these new instruments began to circulate, Moog started to receive offers from the companies who created the music for commercials. This forced Moog to condense the wall of circuitry which he had at the moment into a machine that would be at least somewhat transportable. In doing this, he created the Moog Modular, a synthesizer with a keyboard interface and many knobs and switches to manipulate the sound. These machines took many hours to create and were made to the order. The early Moog machines were very expensive and few in number, but their sound was starting to hit the market. Now that people had begun to hear both the talk about and the sounds of the new Moog modular synthesizers, the demand for this new machine grew in the music industry as many artists and bands wanted to get their hands on one so that they could begin creating songs using these new sounds. The increasing demand forced Moog to condense the machine even further into a machine that could supply the growing demand. The resulting machine is seen as the father of all keyboards, the one that revolutionized electronic music, the Mini Moog. These machines were now being sought for by many big-name artists, such as the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Stevie Wonder, the Monkees, and many more. And as the Moog and its new sound entered the mainstream, its popularity and position in the music industry solidified. The electronic synthesizer was adored by so many musicians and listeners alike, from every genre, from jazz to rock. While the Mini Moog sure made a lasting impression in the music world that had already existed, the truly remarkable outcome of the synthesizer's release was the emergence of many new genres that revolved around that new electric sound. And as the electronic music world came into existence, Moog continued to experiment with his machines so that he could give the artist what they were looking for. This included improving the sound quality, the controls, making machines that were both monophonic and polyphonic, incorporating new technologies in the calibration of the sounds into the machine. He didn't just stop with the Mini Moog, he continued to develop the synthesizer along with the ecstatic world that surrounded it. As he and his company, under the new name Moog Music Incorporated, grew older together in Asheville, North Carolina, his contributions to the music world continued to get recognized by the industry as the leader in the electronic music technology, in the form of many awards including a Grammy, and also a festival dedicated to him for electronic music called Moog Fest. In addition to Moog Fest, another contribution to the music world is his Moog Sound Lab, which allows musical groups and artists to come into the studio and play and create music with the collection of Moog's instruments. Not anyone could have led the music industry towards this new electronic sound like Moog had. Moog's devotion to his work and love for electronic music is going to have an eternal impact on the music world. Music continues to develop around the electronic synthesizer. So much of the music of the 80s, 90s, and today simply could not exist if it wasn't for this man's passion. Robert Moog truly is a pioneer of music and one of the creators in the evolution of electronic music. Everyone who has worked with him, from his partner Herb Deutsch to artists who were customers to his family, couldn't help but brag about how much of a great guy he was to work with and to be around. And musicians, producers, DJs, including myself, have been and are very thankful for his contribution to their lives ever since his trailblazing of the synthesizer. The Moog sound and energy will truly be forever immortalized and continue to have an everlasting impact on the music world.
Everybody go, wow, listen to that. How are we doing? Is that, you want me to twiddle some more?
¿Quieres que toque algo más? Yeah.